Previous guest writes first question. You have the envelope. I'm going to turn the show over to you to get us going.
All right. Let's see what we got here. What were the non-negotiables for you when you decided to get out? Common things, family, job, relationships. I went through the Honor Foundation and, they get you to pick 5, right? And, love what you do, not want to move, things like that. Do you want to make a lot of money? Is it about your job title? And at the time, I was like, I want to make a lot of money, right? I think everybody says that. Or maybe some people are like, I've done 30 years and I'm tired, right? But most guys I've talked to, they're not those type of people. I will say that what I thought were because you can only keep 3 out of the 5, can't keep them all.
Figuratively speaking, when you're working through this process with them.
Yeah, exactly. And, because they try to help you scope all these unknowns to at least a known so you can work from there, right? By the time I went to USC and got done with USC and got to a point, I realized that having the job title and having like a lot of money really wasn't that important. I think that would be a different statement if I wasn't financially smart in my younger years. That has put me in a good place. Maybe if I hadn't done that, that would totally be different. I would be like, okay, I'm about to retire. I know I retired, but I really didn't retire. I've got to start putting money away. But I will say that family, vacation time with friends and family, right? How many guys have you gone through your career and you would go years before you'd see them again? You were like, and you'd pick up right where you left off. And I realized that was fine while we were working. But I guess as you get older and you get maybe more nostalgic, you're like, those friendships, they're important to me. And if they are important to me, I'll make time to call them, talk to them, see how they're doing, and not use that easy excuse of like, oh no, we're good. We just pick up where we left off. And I guess that would be a regret in my younger days is, those people that you could think of immediately that really left marks on your life that you're like, yeah, when's the last time I talked to those guys? So
here's the weird mirror in your face.
Yeah.
Think about the time that you were active. People that you connected with, you felt connected with. They retired, they EAS'd out, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. I'm just trying to put it in a perspective. How many of those people did you make sure that you stayed in contact with while you remained active?
Well, first off, next time beep the horn so I know the bus is coming. No, just kidding. No,
I'll only beep the horn when I'm backing it up for the second time.
Oh, awesome. I mean, it's what I realize when people get out, the people that I keep in contact with them when I was younger, and this is going to sound like, as I look at it, I feel like this is a pretty selfish thing, right? Did I keep in contact with them? No. Were they great people? I had a former mentor, Bill Nesbitt, great guy. We would call each other occasionally. I don't think we talked to each other as much as we should. Same with another mentor like Mark Keenan. And these were people that made me who I am. And then they retired and it was just like, all right, what's the next task? Right. And as I got older and I was getting in that window that, hey, I'm retiring, because people seem to forget in the military that it is a terminal job. You can't do it forever. I remember a friend of mine, he was the chief for training, and he retired and he was gone. And some weird reason I went to his office to ask him a question. And then I got there and I went, oh, he's not here. Wait, that's right. He retired. I knew all this, right? I knew all this information. But I was more interested in the fact of watching the new guy and and that made me think of him to call him. So I called him and I was like, hey, Chris, how you doing? He's like, I'm good. He's like, how are things at work? And I'm like, oh, they're good. And he goes, they still talk to me. And, I didn't have the heart. And I was like, at the time, I was like, yeah, man, they definitely talk about you. No, they don't talk about you. As soon as you leave, you are forgotten. And I recently saw this quote of like,
you might not be forgotten, but
right.
The train is still moving at 100 miles an hour and people don't have the time to be able to go, oh, wait a minute. I need to.
Yeah.
And that was where I was going with this.
Yeah.
There's so many fingers to when you think about transition and from perspectives of how you want to look at it. I'm a big proponent that when you step away from these careers, there has to be a little bit of a conscious effort to take the uniform off, hang it up, and not make that your identity anymore. And step away from that.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, though, the one thing about these careers that makes them so enjoyable and so memorable is that sense of teamwork, camaraderie, your boys, so to speak, that I don't think a lot of other professions ever really get to that level of cohesiveness and connectedness. Yeah. When you're still on that train moving at 100 miles an hour and you know that your best buddy that you've just been multiple deployments with, whatever, he's stepped away, retired, injured, whatever.
Yeah.
If you allow yourself to keep going and forget about them, which is very easy to do, they lose their connection back. So it's a weird dichotomy that you've got to learn a balance of. When you're still in, be that handout to the person who's out. Let them still feel a little connected. But also understand that you're going to be there one day. And when people don't reach out to you, you can't get butthurt.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's all valid. I would say that on the transition front, as I did get older, I realized that out of all the years of experience that everybody that you work with has, right? None of them has any experience with retiring or transitioning or getting out, right? And it literally, as soon as and every time somebody does it, it's the first time it's ever been done. It's crazy. And as I got out, I was like, well, this is crazy. Like, how do we get that knowledge back? And, I started this Facebook group called INSOT, Naval Special Operations Transition, just to give a platform for guys to ask questions and the older guys to share their experience, right? And also to try to map I think this is probably true for all first responders, right? Where, sure, we have tons of manuals, but we have these little quick step guides like, hey, I've got to do, stop the bleeding, start the breathing kind of stuff, get the area secured before I can do anything from a Leo perspective. And so there we started creating this quick step for guys who came after us to go, here are the steps. Because with the VA, you are learning a different vocabulary. And the VA has multiple different areas that they're willing to help you. And those people are all experts in their silos, but they don't know how to put it together, and they don't talk really to each other because each individual is different. And I found that this Facebook group, was really good at that. Guys would go, oh, I've had that problem. This is what you do. Oh, have you heard of this assets, to give, service dogs for guys who have PTSD, just different positive attitudes. I did have a friend that went into law enforcement, the guy named Chris, actually, and he went there hoping that it was going to be a lot like the military with camaraderie and all that. I don't think it met what he wanted. And so he decided just to go to another, agency, and it was better, and a lot to what he needs. And I think that gets to kind of like what you're saying, Schmitzko. It's like you had this tribe with you, when you were active duty or in law enforcement or the fire department. And you're right. It is very different than any place in the civilian world, because I've heard it from a lot of vets who go, it's different out here. People just don't talk to me honestly, right? They won't challenge me, because I've noticed that. And I don't mean anything when I say civilians, right? It's just kind of how I'm differentiating military from civilian sector is they're not grown up with being to challenge their friends or coworkers in a manner that's like productive because they're so worried that offending someone could negatively affect them. I think when we're in the military or you've got that partner that's, you're riding around law enforcement all the time for years at a time, that guy is your brother, right? He takes care of you. So when he does something that's little like offbeat, you challenge him. When guys get out in the civilian world, they don't get challenged anymore. But the things that made them, and this is, I think, ironic, the things that made them successful, that tribe, it's like they get out and get lazy. They don't want to make their own tribe, right? Like, because it's effort. This one, you got assigned a tribe. This one, you got to go out and find your tribe, right? You got to find those personalities where it's like, you're like, we're having a drink or something like that. And you're like, Todd, you've had enough. Okay, I've had enough, right? Like or when you speak publicly or something, maybe there's a mannerism about you that is annoying. And your buddy will go, hey, do you know you do this? It's really annoying. Well, first off.
They'll usually say it that politely too.
Right. Well, usually you're like, well, you ain't got to be a jerk about it, right? Like, but you love it, right? Like it's that, I don't know, one away from being a construction worker kind of talk behind closed doors. And then when you come out from behind closed doors, you just show that professional front of we are in line, we are in sync.
Your buddy was also special operations?
Yeah, he was also Navy EOD.
How many years?
He only did 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's safe to assume that had he done 25 in the regular Navy,
right,
probably wouldn't have experienced the same level of teamwork and camaraderie as special operations to a degree. On top of it, he went into a first responder organization as a 40-year-old man, ballparkish.
Yep.
But he's probably at that time, and I don't know how many years we're talking ago, but at the end of the day, he was assigned to a shift more than likely with a bunch of 22, 23-year-olds because they're all brand new. He's back being the new guy again.
Exactly.
So you've really got to put a different set of glasses on when you're retiring from one of these careers and going into a new one, whatever the new one is, because you're going to be back being the newbie again. And the newbies haven't established their tribe, their SOPs or anything. They're all learning it. But you've got all of this experience behind you that you're expecting everybody else to see the same way. So you're, in a weird way, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. Back with most of the guys that I grew up with, we were in the regular Navy, and then we went EOD. Like for me, I was an E6 and went EOD, so I was older than most, and I had to put my ego aside, right? Because when it came to this job, I didn't know anything, and when I showed up to my first team, I had guys who were junior to me, but
more experienced,
because in Navy EOD, you have basic, senior, and master EOD techs. Well, I'm a basic, and I've got a guy who's junior to me who's a senior, and you know what I'm doing? I'm getting a good exercise in humility, right? It's like, because if you're not, you don't learn anything, and you kind of torpedo yourself. I think once you get out, and I kind of noticed this from some of the guys at USC, they have all this knowledge, and it's a very, from the youngest guy who did 4 years to the guy who did 30 years. And I've seen what happens when it's like, yeah, you have all this knowledge, but you can't come steamrolling through the door because it shuts all those young guys down. It's almost like it's like when you show up to the meeting, and you're the new guy to the meeting. Everybody hates that guy who's like the new guy here, and he just has everything to say. Instead of kind of spending about 2 weeks, people getting familiar to you, realizing you're one of them, and you just kind of like, hey, have you maybe thought about trying this? It might save you some headache. And then after a while, then the team, because it's a team, starts realizing your value, and then starts asking you more. And it's a trade. You're trading all the time.
And what's funny is I believe that all of us who do these careers are really good about, in certain situations, let me learn the environment first.
Yeah.
If you get deployed and you're embedded in a local community, a local group, whatever it is, more than likely, every one of those guys keep their mouth shut, eyes open. Let me start seeing who are the power players. Let me start seeing who are the rule, and then we'll start engaging. They're not going to come in most likely barking orders. I'm thinking of a new rookie cop who hits the street. A good one is going to get into a neighborhood because he's going to get assigned to a certain, even if you work for a big city, you're working for a small section, which is its own little city, we'll call it. A good cop is going to get out there and just start learning the people in the area. But when we get into certain environments, like a business environment, something, there's the complete opposite. It's like, we don't know the lay of the land, but we want to come in and take over.
Right. But I think what you said is true amongst all. I think most first responders, when they get into any new environment, they have enough situation awareness to start understanding their environment. Like who are the tough people? Who are the hard people? I think there are these common things that people know inherently, maybe they've never identified, right? Like it's like, hey, I need to understand the lay of the land before I start getting in front of my skis. What fails organizations, platoons, small teams, communication, right? Communicate frequently and often. And don't be, but at the same time, don't be in the back seat, right? You got to drive.
Yeah,
your
you don't
car.
want to be passive.
Right, exactly. And because if you sit there and spend, and after I retired, I realized I did do a lot of this, where I was like, well, everything I've learned, I can't use any of this stuff out here, and you know, I've got to totally change. And as we were going through, say, USC, and we were doing our capstone with IBM, I realized that all those things of how to put together small teams and tackle problems and communication and all that was all still true.
Do you look forward to that first cup of coffee of your morning? Then Blue Line Roasting is the choice for you. They're a Tennessee-based, law enforcement-owned company, roasting small batches of premium coffee, fresh, within 48 hours of your ordering. And they ship it fast so it doesn't sit around getting stale. From Patriot, their light roast, to Failure Drill, their dark roast. Whole bean or ground, they've got you covered. But Blue Line Roasting is more than just good coffee. A portion of every purchase goes to support law enforcement families who are dealing with line of duty injury or loss. So your morning routine becomes something bigger. Grab a single bag, try a sampler pack, or get a subscription set up so you're never caught without it. Also, shipping is always free. And for the listeners of this podcast, use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your order. Head over to bluelineroasting.com and make your morning count.
And I realized that, no, I actually knew all the right things to do in my new civilian job, you know, at Naval Special Warfare, is that communication, frequently communicating, you know, asking questions and asking pointed questions, right? Like what, because I want to help you, tell me how I help you, right? And it gains a lot, you know, any person who you realize like, okay, this guy's trying to help me. The next time that guy comes around, it's like, hey, what do you need? Right? Law enforcement, fire department, you know, it's, people don't forget things like that. And so those things were all translatable. I think a lot of guys, including me, thought those things were not translatable. I think some guys do struggle with. Go ahead.
I think the key word to use is they're transferable. You have to learn how to translate it once you start operating in a different environment.
Yeah,
I think that's where a lot of us get jacked up, is because we're so used to, and it's expected of us, to walk into an environment and take control of the environment. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, in certain environments, that's going to piss a lot of people off. Yeah. But it's also, like you said, you have the skills and the aptitude from all of your years of service. You may not be literally dismantling explosives,
Right.
but you understand communication, teamwork, all that. It's just turning your brain on to go, how do I make them understand teamwork, communication?
Right.
So it's not that it's not transferable. It's just you have to learn how to translate.
Yeah, that's a way better way to say that. But it's, as I go through even problem solving, right? Like whether it's like, had an explosive device down range, how do I mitigate the risks? How do I keep people safe? As we do, Force Design 2040 for Naval Special Warfare, it's a problem that's far away, like the device that's far away, and I'm having to mitigate all the things to get onto target to ensure that we can get to year 2040 to have a force that is what it needs to be with the technology available at that time. And that's a lot of, I think, risk mitigation that I would say any first responder has those skill sets. I will give one. When we had a meeting once, we had the tech industry come out. And this was a transition event, and I remember that there was a Master Chief in the room, and he had made a comment of like, "Well, I'm not a technical person." And I was like, "Well, T4 hold. How do you figure, man? Like, you play with robotics, you do blast frag calculations in your head, you do the inverse square law calculations for radiation sources in your head to mitigate risk. You're not technical?" And then once I framed it for him, he goes, "Oh, yeah, I guess I am technical." I was like, yeah, because those aren't common things. But sometimes guys, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of it when I reveal to them something they already do and they don't even know they do. I call it, and I think this is a doctrinal type word. It's unconscious proficiency, right? They just do it in their sleep. And it's such a rewarding personally to see guys like, "Oh, wait, yeah, you're right. I can do that." I've had so many friends that have been empowering, and it was like, well, I'm gonna do this, that, and the other, and they're like, "And you could do that. You're smart enough. You could definitely do that." I had a friend who was like, "I think I'm gonna get into real estate, or I'm gonna hire somebody to do some real estate stuff," and but he really liked it that's all he talked about. And I was like, "Well, you could go get your real estate license. You're smart enough. I bet you could do it like in a couple of months, maybe in a couple of weeks. I don't know." And just him go, "You know what? I'm gonna look into that. You're right." Like, and it did lead to a very lucrative, like where it was kind of his side hustle, right? He moved to Tennessee. He has all these rental properties now. He's living pretty nicely. But I think there are these key people come into your life that add value. There's plenty of people that are sunk costs, right? They don't add value. And also too, when you have those people around you, you should be trying to find people that are smarter than you are. Don't be intimidated, right? Have them know something you don't. I don't need a lot of Tod Neals running around. And I'm pretty sure people in out in that audience that know me probably go, "Oh yeah, we don't need more Tod Neals running around here," right? But
Make him go away.
Exactly, right? Like, but getting those guys who offset you create that team again where everybody has something to bring to the table that leads to success. Sometimes it's just that guy who hears your problems and sometimes just listens. Sometimes you get the guy who listens and then finally goes, "Okay, I've had enough of you feeling sorry for yourself. Time for you to put on your big boy pants and get back after it." Sometimes you need to hear some stuff like that. I heard those same exact things. Buddies going, "Okay, hey, I've heard enough of your whining. How about you put on your big boy pants, even though you're a small guy? They're not so big. And, you laugh and you're like, okay, yeah, I get what you're putting down, man. It's time to put your head down and get after it again. And I think transitioning, there's a lot of guys who feel lost. They know what to do, but they don't have that tribe again that's reinforcing those positive moving forward behaviors.
Going back to that original question, when you think about your non-negotiables, when you were coming to your transition, when you came to your retirement, and you started working through that pick your 5.
Yeah.
What was the biggest thing you saw change in what you thought was a non-negotiable that either didn't become a non-negotiable or changed?
And one of the non-negotiables in the beginning was I didn't care who I worked with as long as I made a lot of money. But then I realized, as we're sitting here talking about tribes and people, the people are more important to me than the amount of money. I didn't need to because if I enjoy the people I work with, that means I'm probably enjoying my job and I like to go to work. I can make a lot of money and be totally miserable. As far as the other thing is family, right? During the war, deployed a lot, 6 combat deployments, 10 total deployments over my lifetime. There was a 5-year period where I was deployed every 6 months. So out of 5 years, I was only home for 2.5 years. My kids, they were young. They were, newly babies, toddlers, and I missed out on a lot of that. And I justified it myself that it's okay because it really hurts me more than it hurts them because they probably won't even remember. And as they got older and I was getting to the point where I was retiring from the military, I really wanted to make sure I had the time to spend with them, I don't know, to make up for that lost time with them, because you never get it back.
The other question that I had related to that was one of the biggest things and I've had this conversation now with quite a few, especially from the veteran community, because you can do 1 enlistment, 2 enlistment. So you're still really young when you're transitioning out. But even those first responder side, veteran side who did a career, did their 25, 30 years, whatever it is, but they're still young enough they're going to go do something else. They don't know what they want to do. So like when you walked into the Honor Foundation and they start having you do your non-negotiable, but even boiling it more basic, did you know what you wanted to do in the civilian world other than making a lot of money?
No, absolutely not. Because you don't know how your skill set translates. Even though I do have a skill set that translates, you law enforcement guys make it really hard for us to get into the bomb squad. But
we don't.
Right.
The organization does because you got to earn your way into it.
Right. And so, and you could do a whole time and never make it in there. But the military has a bad habit of doing processes that are very similar to the civilian sector. They will literally call it something different. And so you can't make the connection as to what I do in the military actually equates to this in the civilian sector. I hear or see a lot of guys who get out, they wind up just becoming project managers because it's a very transferable skill no matter what you've done. But still, there is when civilians see a military guy, like you're trying to go for a job, I think they all think that everybody is doing every war movie they've ever seen in their life, right? And all you do is jump out of planes and shoot guns and blow things up. And there is only 75%, like 25% of the force does those kind of things, that have combat jobs. The other 75% is like every other person in society. They have a logistics job, they have an administrative job, they have, but when it comes to that transition, I don't know if you want to call it a bias, but people or like, I don't understand how your skill set because we don't shoot people here. It's like, well, I really don't shoot people either. Well, for the majority, only the bad people, right? Like, it's like, but
I only shoot people who need to be shot.
right, exactly, right. And so when you go to the civilian sector, you have to really get really good at translating, using your word, like translate those skill sets over so they understand. It's like, well, I worked in a business. It looked a lot like the military. It's almost like you have to pull that cloak of invisibility so they're like, oh, you're like us. That commonality. You have to, because people resonate to things that are familiar to them. And unfortunately, the military is not familiar to the majority of society. Military makes up 1% of the U.S. population. So the chances of people even knowing someone in the military is pretty slim. Of course, we're in a military town. You probably can't even throw a rock without hitting like someone who's a brat of a military or in the military. But for the rest of the United States, it's a struggle. So hence, you have to get to a point where you're very good at translating. And I would even say that with the invention of AI now, it makes it super easy because you can sit there and go, how do I translate this to terminology that the average person is going to understand?
Well, the other component of that I believe is equally important that you have to, it goes back to controlling that ego, putting that ego in your back pocket, so to speak. And what I mean by that is you're going into a new environment. You want to go play in their sandbox. So if you come in with the ego of, hey, I've done all this really cool shit, and I expect you to acknowledge it and recognize it and just give me a job, you're going to be fighting, you're going to be banging your head against a wall.
Right.
So there is a little bit of that, hey, have some pride in what you did, but also understand they have a job to do in their environment. You need to make yourself marketable to what works for them.
Right. It's probably like being on any professional NFL team. You go to a new team, you're kind of the rookie again, right? I'm sure if you go to a new law enforcement department, you're kind of the rookie again. You got some knowledge, but you got to swallow that ego because it's an acceptance thing. It's like, okay, are you worth our time and effort, even though you're a new guy? Yeah, you got tons of experience, but are you going to work out here? And I think putting that ego aside, good exercise and humility again, and going, hey, this is how I can help you. Again, showing people how you can help them usually opens the doors to like, you know what? Hey, we're going to go for drinks on Friday. Paul, hey, why don't you come with us? Right? You start getting accepted by the new tribe, and then you start able to show them all the things that you're able to bring, and you're probably in a position where they're more accepting of it than you just coming in, over the top and not easing into your new operational environment.
Well, let's roll this tape back to the beginning.
Okay.
Let's take you back to young Tod Neal.
Ooh.
Where's hometown? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Ruston, Louisiana. I actually grew up in a place called the Methodist Children's Home. Probably not the typical life that most people have. I grew up there, and as I got older, I wasn't a great student. I kind of didn't have focus. And you're going to laugh when I say this, but like the movie Top Gun came out, the original one, and I was like, ooh.
The better one?
Right, the better one, right? Where everybody was younger. And maybe you could redo this podcast where we're younger, but anyway.
I don't know what you think my budget is, but it ain't that big.
But anyway, I watched that and I was like, I would like to go do that. How do I do that? And I started asking that question. It's like, well, how do I do that? And somebody went, well, you're not going to do that with grades like this. And I was like, ooh, okay. First thing, I got to get grades up. And it's just junior high, right? And it gave me a goal. And so I started working toward that. Okay, how do I get to the Naval Academy?
You talked about growing up in a children's home. You didn't like school, or your grades weren't good. Was it purely application, or was there actual struggles for you academically?
If struggles were laziness, yes, that was it. But I just, or maybe I was bored, right? I maybe it was more, I would say it's laziness, right? I think all kids probably that age suffer from that. But as I got to high school, I had focus. I need to know what I need. I knew what I needed or to do to get to what I wanted. And so I started becoming a 4.0 student, right? All through, freshman year. Now I'm in my sophomore year.
You found that motivation internally, or did you have somebody who became a positive influence for you?
Well, the children's home had structure, right? And I think in that structure, I thrived. And you'll see how later in the story is that that structure went away and I didn't thrive very well. So I was 2 years behind and I was trying to make those up. So I was going to summer school, doing, correspondent courses, trying to get myself back on track. And I was 17. And I'm like, ooh, I've seen not many people stay here after 18. So I asked, hey, am I going to be okay? And they were like, you're going to be fine. You're going to get to finish high school. And I think it was like 3 weeks later, and the director of education came over and said, well, we just had the board. The board said nobody stays after 18. And literally the like, oh my God, what's going to happen? A couple of months from now, about 8, I am turning 18. Am I going to find myself on the street? Because there were no halfway homes back then. And so a week later, he comes back. He's like, I have an idea. You're going to drop out of high school. You're going to go get your GED, and you're going to take the entrance exam for Louisiana Tech University. My first thought was, this is a terrible idea. I was like,
what's option 2?
Right? There was no option 2, I guess. I guess option 2 was I go out the door and I just figure it out on my own.
How many years did you live at the children's home?
From the age of 16, from when my grandmother died to basically I was 18, because I lived with my grandmother. And so once she died, mother really wasn't in the picture per se. And being in the children's home in a lot of ways was like the military. It had structure, it had guidelines, it had rules. You almost kind of like made rank like you do in the military. I just didn't realize at the time. But, fast forward and then going through, dropping out, getting my GED, taking an exam. Like within an 8-month period, I went from being a sophomore in high school to a freshman in college. Well, I had the intelligence, I had an engine to go forward. Obviously, I didn't have a steering wheel because the car came off the track as soon as I didn't have that structure around me anymore.
Did you move on campus, like the whole
I
dorms?
Did. Yep. The children's home literally moved me out of my house at the children's home and into a dorm at Louisiana Tech. And, I did like a year and a half there, and I struggled. And the struggle was because I guess I wasn't adult enough, or I didn't have the skill set to force myself to do the things I didn't want to do. The reading, the homework, and plus 2, I was working full time and I was falling asleep in class. So I failed out of college, and I was pretty bitter. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to join the Navy. I obviously need some discipline. I need some money so I don't have to work full time. And I could focus on doing this the right way. Well, I got into the military. I was an admin person for like 8 years in the Navy.
But it was for sure Navy because of Top Gun? Or, I mean, in the sense of, did you examine any of the other branches?
The Army. I did, the Army. And I think when push came to shove, when I was finally like ready to commit, walking in there and their door was shut and that door was open. That's how I ended up in the Navy. And plus 2, the whole Top Gun thing. And
for point of reference, what year did you go in?
1991, June 1991. And I had this thought of like, hey, the Gulf War's going on. I'm going to be in the Gulf War. And before I got out of boot camp, it was over. I was like,
that cup of coffee didn't even get warm.
It didn't. I was making the coffee back then. So I think it was ground still by then. So I did that for like 8 years, but I was able I worked, in Hawaii, and I was able to like talked to my bosses and was like, hey, send me to dive school. And they sent me to dive school. And I was like, so I was a diver. And
As an admin guy?
As an admin guy. Because
it's a required skill set.
But I love to go to the range because we had a SEAL that worked in there, and like he would go to the range and go on swims, and I was always like, hey, can I do that? Can I tag along? And so I did all that, and then he had recommended, he's like, hey, the base has a thing called Auxiliary Security Force. I think you'd be good for that. You volunteer for it. So I volunteered for it, and I learned how to shoot a .45 and run an obstacle course, and stand posts and things like that when I wasn't doing the admin stuff in Hawaii. So that gave me, and I was like, ooh, I really like the shooting aspect, and I like the diving part. I don't get paid for it, but I like it. And so I did the 8 years, and I wound up getting a computer science degree. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get out. This being on a ship thing, it's not my thing. And I wasn't really diving as much anymore, and I wasn't getting to go shoot. So I was like, I don't really like doing this.
So was that the end of your second enlistment?
Actually, yeah, it was my second enlistment.
In those first 8 years, were you able to avoid actual ship time, or were you able to stay?
No. I did 4 years in Hawaii, and then the other 5 years I wound up doing about 4.5, say 4 and 4, here in San Diego on the USS Boxer. And that's when I got exposed to the real Navy, right? And I was like, ooh, I'm not sure I like this. And I was like, and I felt like I was underappreciated. I wasn't meeting my full potential. So I was going to school on the side and got my associate's degree, and was like, okay, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do this job. And this was probably around 1998, 99-ish. I
want to take you back real quick, though.
Yeah.
The kid who ends up living in a children's home.
Yeah.
Way too soon shoved into college life. I need to catch up on maturity. Forget anything else.
Yeah.
Were you a squared away kid, though, in general? And then day one boot camp.
Yeah.
Does it fit for you, or do you go, oh, wrong choice? So
squared away, I would say I was probably maybe 51% squared away, but not enough, right? And going to boot camp, oh man, I the worst sound I've ever heard in my life was that metal trash can going down through the middle of that hallway, waking you up from your sleep. And somebody saying, get on a line. And I'm like, what line? And I find the line, and I'm standing there at attention, and, they're yelling at you. And I'm like, and I was like, I have made a big mistake here. I've made a huge mistake. But I don't know where I got this thought, but I thought that like boot camp was a thing that you couldn't quit. Right. I was like, well, I'm stuck here. I have to do this. Right. And I think because later there was a guy that wasn't there anymore, and it was toward the end, and I can't remember his name, but I was like, oh, where was say Frank? I was like, where's Frank? And they were like, oh, he quit. He quit. Wait a second, this was an option the whole time, right? I was like, well, I'm glad I didn't know it was an option, because I probably wouldn't have made it, because I would have quit. And so we get done and we move forward, and and I've asked myself this question, because I had that failure. I think if I had the option to quit, I would have quit. I don't know where in any of that, where I started getting where the taste of failure didn't taste right. I can't tell you how that happened. I knew I was stubborn back then. I was headstrong. I wanted to have something better. Like, it's like, okay, how do I make my life better? And, I knew I wanted to go to college. Had some failures. Didn't like those failures. I joined the Navy in hopes to gain something, to come back to do it right, and maybe be a different person. But then, of course, like, get into the Navy, and I'm in Hawaii, and I'm like, oh, well, it's like Forrest Gump, like I'm like peas and carrots here, right? And in the Navy, things seem to work well for me. They have a system. I know how to follow a system. I'm smart enough to understand the why behind the system and not just be someone who presses a button. But at the same time, I realized that the job field I was in was only going to get me so far. So I got out, went into the reserves, wound up getting placed at an EOD unit because I had a dive NEC, and got there and was like, ooh, this is really nice. I like this. And started blowing things up, getting qualified in demolition, getting mixed gas qualified so I could dive deeper and, on rebreathers and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I really like this. It's almost like the best of both worlds. And I was a weekend warrior, and then 9/11 happens. And
were you still here in the San Diego area, though?
I was down there at 32nd Street. That's where EOD Mobile Unit 7 was at the time. And it was the reserve unit. And I'm like, we all got called back to active duty. And we were called back to active duty almost a year. And by the time that year was over, I think I was like, man, how am I at like 10 years? I'm like halfway to retirement. And they let us go and went back to my job where I was, computer programmer for like a unmanned underwater system. And I just was like, I'm just not satisfied. I'm stuck behind a desk all the time. I'm young. I'm like, I don't want to do this. There's a war going on. I feel like there's a part for me to play in this. So I go back to the reserves. I said, hey, I would like to go back to EOD school, finish out the portion that you don't have to do as a reservist, and get in the fight. And that went by super quick. And next thing you know, I'm at, SEAL Team 7, deploying with the SEAL team, and then coming back, training up to go on another deployment with SEAL Team 3, and then getting my old Senior Chief, Mark Keenan, catching me coming back from the dive locker going, hey, what are you up to? I was like, oh, I don't know. He's like, putting together a special team. You want to be on it? And I was like, working for you? He's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, sure. Let's do that. And I was like, where are we going? And he's like, we're going to Fallujah. And I was like, hey, I've been hearing on the news. There's like a big thing going on. There's about to be a big battle. And he's like, is it that? And he goes, I think so. I was like, let's go do it.
So when you EAS, or it's not even an EAS, in the sense of, well, explain it to me. You come to the end of your second enlistment. You've spent the last 5.5 years on a ship. You're like, this part of the Navy doesn't work for me.
Right.
I'm going to get out, but I'm going to stay as reserve.
Right.
Do they give you a list of reserve units and you're like, hey, or how did you end up at an EOD unit?
Because I had separated from a helicopter squadron at North Island, because I'd done my time on the ship and I was now at a helicopter squadron called HS-10, doesn't even exist anymore. I really enjoyed that vibe and environment, and I had once again done something that's not normal to an admin guy. I had gone and got qualified to run vibration analysis in back of the helos. So I was getting flight pay. So I was always trying to find these things these things that just weren't normal that like I could go do and like feel a sense of accomplishment. And so once I got out from that,
not to undersell it, was it not merely just to take up time? Like, was there a method to your madness, or were you just looking for a way to go, man, this aspect's boring, so I want to go find something exciting to do?
Well, how it kind of went down was because I would work for the commanding officer. So I worked in this little room, and I had earshot to both. And I would hear them say like how they couldn't get people qualified to go do this, and it was hurting the organization. And I just simply went, can I do that? And he kind of like, ooh, you're not the right kind of, you're not an air, you're not what they call them Airedales, right? And I was basically considered a black shoe, like a ship type person. And he's like, ooh, I guess so. I mean, if you can pass the qualification, I don't see why you can't. And so I went and I volunteered and passed the qualification. And then whenever I was on the flight schedule, I would go do my admin work, and then I would go down and, do the pre-mission checks and get into the SH-60 and fly around. And of course, all of these were broke helicopters, so that was a little bit crazy, right? Like you're flying a helicopter to get it to flight status. So theoretically, it's broke. And so you're flying around.
Fingers crossed.
Right? But you would do all this vibration analysis and run a computer and put weights on these things, absorbers on the aircraft. And when you were done with all that, I would take a laptop with me and I would sit in the back. Okay, naval standard letter, blah, 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 right? Well, because the pilots always wanted to get more flight hours, so they'd fly all over the place. And then we'd land and I'd go back up to admin and, do my thing. But I got some enjoyment out of that because it gave me a sense of I'm helping out the team. I have more purpose than, just doing admin work, which is pretty, thankless work, right?
From the Navy's perspective, you don't hit enough blips on the radar with all the training that you went to that you're actually pulled into something different?
No. They like what you're doing for them, but I mean, I could probably have changed, but that would have been something I would have initiated on my own. But I decided to get out. About that time, I had gotten married, and my life was totally changing. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just go. I'm not going to do this stuff. I'm not deploying anymore, this, that, and the other. I was like, but you have to be in the reserves. I forgot what the time period is, but it's kind of like one of those unwritten things. Like if you joined for 4 years, you still have a reserve obligation for 10 years, I think. I'm not sure what the number is, but you have an obligation that most people don't track. And you can do it where you don't affiliate with a reserve unit, or you can. And I chose I still kind of want to do this stuff. I would love to continue to fly around these helicopters. That's fun, right? And I went to the reserve unit and they were like, okay, yeah, we see that you do this, but this is not an NEC that what you're doing. It's just temporary flight orders. You have an NEC for diving, and we need divers, and we need them here at this unit, which was EOD. And I knew what EOD was. And I got there and they had sent me there as an admin person to get me there. And then once I was there, they were able to basically change my position to a ordnance clearance detachment and put me on a small team.
Any reservations playing with stuff that goes boom?
Oh no, it's I bumped into not General Mattis, but Petraeus out in Iraq one time, and he saw how I was dressed, and he was like, "Okay, let me guess. You're either ODA or you're Navy EOD." And I was like, "Navy EOD." And he goes, "Well, what are you doing here?" I was like, "The same thing I do every day, sir. Clearing every IED that I can, which saves a life, right?" And he kind of nodded his head and it was like, "All right, great job. Keep it up." There's a lot of satisfaction there. It's, that job was like literally as you would go through the war, every explosive device you were taking was like, it wasn't hurting U.S. forces, wasn't hurting the Iraqi population or Afghan population or even Syria or Syrian population. But it's a weird profession, right? Like where it's like on one half you're saving lives and the other half you're taking them, especially when you're on the SEAL teams, right? And it's like, I'm here to provide, impedance to assault. And in some aspects, I may be with ODA and I'm here to take care of a nuclear, biological, or a chemical device. Now they're providing security to me. So it's very symbiotic, right? Symbiotic relationship. But in the end, and I would probably say this is true for any civilian Bob squad. I mean, every explosive device that you take off the streets is saving someone's life. Even if you were like doing one for one, every one IED is one life. But as you know, a device can kill and maim, a lot of people.
So now, are you a single EOD tech that is assigned to a SEAL team, or is there an EOD unit assigned to a SEAL team.
Your platoon gets assigned. But when you're on a platoon, it's usually 2 of you that go into the platoon. You work in pairs. And it's more of that safety kind of thing. You know, that guy over your shoulder as you go do something, like, you really want to do that? Okay, you might have a point there. But most guys can work alone, but it's usually not preferred, right?
Was there a TV show about Navy EOD during the Gulf War, like early on?
Yeah, for Afghanistan, Bomb Patrol Afghanistan.
Did you get offered to do that, or?
I did not. I was at that point had moved from an operational unit to our training unit here in San Diego, and I think at that point I was in our nukes division, training guys how to handle like nuclear weapons and stuff like that. And by the time I got to back to an operational unit, they were trying to do episode 2, which got canceled because of the combat commander didn't want it, so it kind of died on the vine. But what a lot of people don't know about that episode is when you watch an episode, that is like multiple different events tied into a storyline, so that way we could protect TTPs, events, places, people, things like that. And even some of our own guys thought that was what the guys were doing, like from start to finish, and questioned their how safe they were being. And they didn't understand that it was a bunch of chopped pieces to make a storyline to not give away the bag, per se, to like the civilian population, because we don't want people to know how to do things, right?
Yeah, for TV, you've got to go from step 5 to step 12 without showing 6 through 11.
Yeah, very well said. That's exactly right. But I know several guys who, like Ricky Tebow, who was on there, and I think he was like, he had the saying, it was in one of the opening lines, is like, this is not Hollywood, this is Afghanistan. And the amount of firefights that they were in and the things that they really did was amazing. And a lot of the stuff they did with the Afghans as well, it just kind of shows the other half of EOD, where it's like, we have that soft side too, but we also have the hard side as well. And a lot of guys have a good way of turning that on and off. I would say that's probably at the beginning when EOD started really getting more into mental health, because guys were struggling. I was even struggling. Multiple deployments, started reflecting at home, things getting rough, and it was everybody. Like the tempo of war started to affect the guys at home. Marriages were falling apart, and as I got older, I also realized too that, young sled dogs, they will run themselves to death. Sometimes as a leader, you have to step in and tell them to take a knee.
When it comes to sunglasses, first responders and military members definitely don't baby them. They get dropped, thrown in a utility pocket, or tossed in gear bags. Frontline Optics was created for that reality. You get premium eye protection without paying designer brand prices for something that won't survive your lifestyle. From polarized UV 400 lenses to anti-reflective coatings and a water-repellent finish, every pair is designed to handle long days, harsh conditions, and real work. And here's where Frontline Optics separates themselves from the pack. When life happens and your glasses break, they offer a no-questions-asked replacement program, even for prescription glasses. On top of that, Frontline Optics was founded by a firefighter, and a portion of every purchase goes to support the First Responders Children's Foundation, helping families of those who gave everything. So if you're looking for sunglasses that look good, are built tough, and come from a company that actually understands the job, visit frontlineoptics.com and use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Frontline Optics, from a first responder for the front lines.
And they will be so mad at you for doing it. And you can tell them 100 times that you're trying to do it for their best, for them, their mental health and their family, and they'll never see it until they get older. And then they'll see it. I think that, looking at law enforcement, and I think things are probably better now than say where they were, 15, 10, 20 years ago, where you don't talk about those things, right? Just keep them inside. If you talk about those things, you're soft. And I think keeping those things bottled up is what led to, like, say, fights at home and things like that. And it wasn't really the home that was doing anything or causing it. It was this guy who's in this super, he has to be super aware when he's at work of every threat that's possible. And when he goes home, it's like his little fortress of solitude. And he wants that to be like, he doesn't want to interact with people. He doesn't want to go to lunch with people. He just kind of wants to sit there and probably veg out in front of the TV. Mindless stuff, right? And then the wife, in my case, it was like, hey, we're going to dinner with such and such and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, I'd really like a little more heads up. And it would make me mad. It really wasn't that was making me mad. It was the impeding on my time to decompress, I guess. And I didn't know how to say that, right, to her. And eventually we got there. But with first responders, I can only think of like the fire department, like every time I go back, car crash or something, I was like, these guys are still in the war. These guys see it every day, right? Or hopefully not every day. I didn't see it every day, but I mean, I will say that my tour in Fallujah was the pinnacle of my career. I never did more work than I did in that 6 months or 7 month deployment than I did if you totaled up everything else after that, they don't equal what I did in that one. Number of post blasts we had to do. And the only time we did post blasts back then was coalition force kill or, ECM, a vehicle that had ECM on it. But whereas like when I go by and I'm on the 5 or something and I see the fire trucks, I see the police and obviously a car turned over or something, I'm only hoping like that it's not like, a family. It's not like a child or something like that. Like, and if it is, I hope the leadership is like, or the organization has those assets available to those first responders so they can go, and the leadership that will be intrusive and go, okay, you're not going to go on yourself. I can tell there's a change because that's what happened to me. You're going to go. And I was mad about it. Right. And then after a while, I just realized that like it was good. And allowed me to have a plan, a strategy to deal with these things and not just go home and like light up my wife or like yell at my kids over some insignificant thing of not doing the laundry, like it's life or death or something.
I do believe it's changing across the board. And I'm sure you probably even experienced it too in the military. From the first responder side of the house, definitely changing. The positive aspect to it, though, is the younger men and women coming into these careers, they aren't going to let these careers ruin them the way my generation did, the way, even the millennial generation to a degree, the older ones who came in that era of suck it up.
Yeah.
Keep your feelings to yourself, move on to the next one. And you hit something that's very important. Military members deploy, foreign country, see horrendous stuff. Combat is a different beast. But you come home. Yeah. And for the most part, you don't have to drive down the street going, is that bump an IED? You don't have to worry about it per se.
You do, though.
That man or that woman that goes to that rollover collision where a family coming home from a barbecue is now no longer a young child ends up in a children's home because of it. Every time they go through that intersection, that stretch of the freeway, that intersection, whatever, even if you don't consciously acknowledge it, there's got to be something that's registering subconsciously in you. And it just sits there and grinds every day for the remainder of your career.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's a bucket, and that event puts a little bit of sand in there, and the next one puts a little more, and to the point where your bucket just starts overflowing. And unless you realize how to start dumping out a little of that sand, or that it's not your weight to carry, right? It helps to have professionals that can show you techniques. It's like any other thing we're talking about, right? Like, I don't have that skill set. All right, well, let me go find somebody who has a skill set to do that. And like you said, like, it's, the whole suck it up thing, like, it's all balancing, right? It's like, you have to have a certain degree of sucking it up, and then certain, like, to keep you moving forward. But there are certain things that, like, self-awareness of, like, or leadership being like, hey, like, how is life at home? Or why are you here so early? Why are you here so late? What's going on? And some guys, it could be a cover like, yeah, I just don't want to go home. Like it's easy for me. I did that. Actually, it wasn't because, like, it was just easier to be at work than go home and have to, like, do family stuff. And, that's not the right answer. And luckily, I had my tribe who literally stopped me one time and had in a hallway and was like, had asked me, a good friend of mine, he's like, Mark Britton, he's like, hey, have you ever been diagnosed with PTSD? And I'm like, no, I don't have PTSD. Talk to you later. And start to walk off, but he grabbed me by the arm and he's like, okay, hey, look, let's go in the office to have a talk. And he basically broke it down to me. And he's like, look, he goes, I've known you for a lot of years and you're different. You're a little more volatile. You're like, you're mean at times. And he's like, and I'm like, and hearing it from him, somebody that I trust, I was like, he goes, how about I make a phone call, and as a favor to me, you go. And I was like, okay, as a favor to you, I'll go, but there's no problem with me. And of course,
last words.
Yeah, exactly. Right. and I went and was given a skill set to handle a bucket that was definitely overflowing with sand, water, whatever you want to call it, and getting it to a level that is manageable, right? Everybody has something in their bucket, right? You just don't want to get it to overflow. And I think what's provided to any type of law enforcement, and even in the military, they're serious about it. Like, we realize by doing this, it benefits actually us, right? It's us as, like, the organization, because I'm keeping you as an up round and 100% instead of just kind of using you and disposing of you. And I think that's kind of like our generation. Like, it was one of those things, not purposely done. It's just how things were done. And
I honestly believe that's a component of these careers that will never go away.
Yeah.
Because the senior leadership, whether it be from the military or be a law enforcement or a firefighting agency, they have a duty to their community that needs to be provided.
Yeah.
And so when you choose to retire and step off the train, they have to say, but the train has to keep going and I need another body to fill that spot. So there is a weird dichotomy that the careers are always going to place that demand on you.
Yeah.
I recently heard an interview with, and I'm drawing a blank her name now and I feel bad. She's a chief of police from a Northern California police department. And she's talking about the changes in their organization and that she's seen over the time in her career. And more importantly, that she's adopting and implementing in her police department. And basically what she was saying is that, and I'm gonna pivot real quick and just say, one of the detriments for these careers is most of the men and women who come into them very young. So they're not fully mature yet. And then you throw them into this meat grinder of what the world can show you at its worst.
Yeah.
And you expect them to stay normal.
Right.
But she was talking about within her organization, especially with new officers, when you go experience that first really bad call, the first time you experience what an adult can do to a child, you know, those type things that just really are a different level that I don't.
Hard.
The average civilian doesn't realize how inhumane people can be to another person. And so you've got this young man, this young woman that's a new police officer. They go experience this. One of the things they do is, hey, you're going back to the station minimum. If it's that bad for you, you're going home for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And the thing that we have to realize is the old salts who sit there and go, oh, that's just being weak.
Yeah.
Bullshit. There's too many of us who have taken our lives because of the totality of the sand in that bucket.
Yeah.
And if early in their career, their training officer turns to them and instead of going, all right, you ready for the next call? Maybe you just go, hey, how'd that call make you feel?
Yeah.
How you doing with that? If it scrambled your eggs, guess what? I'm going to pull you off the line.
Yeah.
And there's no big deal about it.
Yeah.
I see that as the positive change coming.
Yeah. It's you know, we do what we do so the society never sees the worst of humanity. But with no doubt, there are good people and evil people in the world. And people who are in law enforcement, people who are in the fire department, these people are the ones who shield society from all those evils. And again, will society ever understand? No. Will they be thankful? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they're impartial. I don't know.
They're thankful, and I don't mean this as sarcastic as I'm going to say it. They're thankful when it's convenient to them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right? Like it's, and you can't fault them because you only do the things that you've been taught to do, and society has kind of taught them that that's what you do. And it's not, it's just how it is, right? It's just how it is. And do I expect society to ever understand what I do? I don't understand like what you've done. I have an idea. I've worked with law enforcement in my job, and kind of have an idea, but do I really no, right? Just like a SEAL. A SEAL doesn't actually understand everything I do. I don't understand everything he does, right? But there is there's definitely, because we are very alike in our professions, there's a sense of respect for those type of people. I've heard it multiple times. Guys who have gone, I have a friend who does some part of a civilian business, but he works with the fire department, giving them supplies and stuff like that. The guy that had the job before him was not within any type of military, law enforcement, anything. Didn't do very well. He gets in the position, and again, wait, you're a lot like me. A lot more talking, a lot more like people, gelling and business doing well now. And again, because, I really don't know what you did, but I know what you do basically. And yeah, that's pretty amazing. What I find amazing is how everybody else goes, what you're doing is amazing. But then the other person's going, no, what you do is amazing. And it may not even be said, but it gets said, maybe mentally. And it's just a level of respect that everyone in a profession that requires you to go deal with the evils of the world and stand there as a protector, as you, as a law enforcement person. It's like, I sit there and I go, I can never do your job. I would never want your job. Your job is hard. My job was easy.
You deal with shit that goes boom. No, thank you.
No. When I roll up, I already know my rules of engagement. I know, like, it's kind of simple, right? You walk up on every car, and it's an unknown. Every time you talk to the average person, it's an unknown. Like, it's crazy to me. Like, it's like, I mean, you could literally go, hey, how you doing today? Next thing you know, you're rolling around on the ground because this guy is a fugitive or something. And you're like, the level of readiness that you guys have to be in when you're in uniform and out there every day is just, I think, is more amazing than anything I've done.
Well, I think all of us look at the other side of the table and go, I wouldn't do your job. Because I guarantee you, there are as many firefighters who go, I would never dodge bullets, for as many cops going, I'm not going into a burning building.
Yeah. But
everybody just perceives that threat differently than what they're trained to handle it.
Yeah. But what's amazing about all these types of people, they are the people that will run toward the sound of gunfire and explosions, right? And there was like a saying, like and that was a part of it, right? Like we run toward the sound of gunfire and explosions, right? We bleed on the flag to ensure the stripes stay red, so that the brilliance of America can shine as bright as the whitest light under the bluest skies, and can sleep safely at night under a blanket of freedom under the stars, all 50 of them.
I use the mental analogy of concentric circles. And those of us who choose these careers, we are in the extreme outer perimeter of that circle. If you want to refer to it as keeping the wolves at bay, keeping evil, whatever it is, but we are at the perimeter, the outer perimeter of that circle, so that the inner concentric circles can go about their life without thinking about the perimeter. The problem is that when you sit on the perimeter, you are exposed to what is trying to get in.
Right.
And so if you use a fire analogy, we've all sat around a fire at a campsite. The closer you sit to the fire, the warmer you get. Your shoes start, oh shit, my shoes are starting to melt.
Yeah.
Because you got your feet up there. All of those little things that happen, all of those little micro burns, they wear on us. Yeah. You don't have to deal with that because you're in an inner circle.
Right.
We're taking care of it. And that's what's eating all of us more often than the actual fire.
Yeah, I mean, I think it, and I don't know if, I'm sure everybody asks themselves, like, sometimes it's like, why do I do what I do? Because I feel like who I do it for is ungrateful. But then you're like, yeah, but that's okay. Because I really do it to the guy to the left and the right of me, guy or gal, right? And it's like, that's who I'm really doing. If I really am true to myself, I'm really here for them, right? Because they're right here with me doing this thing. We're all getting burned together. And it's just like, okay, it's almost like for, bomb disposal. It's like, well, the byproduct is that. But really, it's like, I'm keeping my buddies safe, right? The guys on my platoon. If I do my job well, everybody comes home. If I don't do my job well, people don't come home. If I don't do my job well, innocent bystanders will get hurt, killed, maimed, whatever. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't say most people in this profession are deep thinkers. Some are, but I think some of us are like, we stop at a certain point. I do this because of this. I would say for EOD guys, we're kind of like ones and zeros. We're like, I just need a yes or no. I don't need all the other information. I need specific information, but I don't need all this other information. And because our minds are geared that way, we can take in a lot more information super quickly to make a risk assessment of what needs to happen next, right? Do I need to close down traffic? For me, do I need to push out my perimeter more? Who's in harm's way? Is please don't say it's the device is attached to a person. Okay, well, now I've got to go down there and we're going to get real close and comfortable because I'm trying to keep that person calm as I take this thing off of them. And that way they can get to safety. Once they're to safety, I still have to deal with this thing because it's still an explosive threat, even though it's a vest.
A couple things I'll say to what you said. First, I actually think that most of us who choose these careers are actually really deep thinkers. We just don't tend to articulate it as much. We're not talkers, but we'll think a lot because we're always, and I think it's a byproduct of our job because we are always in situations where we're thinking beyond just this moment.
Yes.
And I think that just becomes natural. You always you're always thinking of other aspects.
Yeah.
The thing you said about, what you ended up going to work every day for was the man or the woman to your left and to your right. I believe that's the aspect of these jobs that we come to learn and appreciate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to oversay it, but I remember years ago, my partner, detective, and I were driving down the freeway one day and we got to talking about doing this job. And he turns to me and goes, because we were called to do it. And I really do believe that for the greater majority of us who choose this life, veteran, first responder, you may not be able to articulate it. You may not even realize it at the time, but there's something inside you that makes you that protector, that makes you that person who wants to help others. So even though you say, there's a lot of people who don't understand and don't appreciate what I do, that doesn't make you get up and go to work every day. You do it. There's something inside you.
Yeah.
And then the longer you do that career and the more opportunities you have to be in those environments with the man to your left, the woman to your right, whatever you want to say, that's what drives you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's this, what just happened here is another great example, right? Like your partner and you wargaming or talking about certain things, but that communication aspect, like talking about like these different things that change your perspective, right? And, you're right. Like it's, as you're like sitting there saying like, well, me and my partner, I was like, well, yeah, we do that. We will sit there and basically work game like, hey, what if this happens? Like blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, if you did this, we could possibly do it quicker, easier, smoother. I really would like for you to stay to the left of me, not in front of me. What I need you to do is if you're working on a device and we take contact from the front, you need to go prone. Don't stand up, right? Just all these things, these TTPs and things that get worked out amongst teammates and allow you to extend your bandwidth, right? Because you've kind of unconscious proficiency. Okay, I've got that down. I ain't even thinking about that anymore. Just like breathing. It's like now when these new things pop up, these new agitations or problem sets that pop up, we can handle those things a lot more than the average person because they're probably not sitting there wargaming certain things, right? Like, hey, like people are like, well, you always sit to your back to the door. I was like, oh, sure. Like, or not back to the door, but like I can see the door. I just kind of want to see, right? Like I just prefer it. I think it's just something that every guy should do, right? Like, it's like, where is a possible threat coming from? And like buddies have sat down and were like, hey, like it's just out of the blue, like, okay, if something were to happen right here, how do you think it would go? And I was like, oh, well, I think it would go like this and da-da-da. And like, no, like, Frank's like, oh, no, I think it goes like this. And like, and people with very strong personalities, right? Very like, my idea is the best idea. But what's amazing about those group of people is they get to a point where it's like, you know what? Your idea was way better. You got me, right? Like, it's like, I see the error in my ways, or where what I like to call magic, right? Where you're like, there's no way we can do this. And you're like, well, I can't do this either, blah, blah, blah. And you're sitting there talking, and it's not even the something that you're specifically talking about. It's just something you say that spurs a different thought, right? And then it goes, what if we did X, Y, and Z instead of A, B, C? Or, any of the other alphabet letters. And then you're like, hey, that's workable. We could do that. That to me is magic, right? It's like, no, you're both adamant about your perspective and you realize both are garbage. But something in there, you're like, oh, wait, there's the answer. that's to me, I've seen it so many times, and it gives me so much pleasure to like together we got the solution, but individually we weren't getting there. Like it took us to listen to each other and get there. I think whether you're riding along in a car or you're an EOD team riding around with 3 guys in a Humvee, or if you're on a SEAL team, right? No problem's ever the same. Some of the base things are commonalities that you can put TTPs to, but yeah, it takes a team, right? It takes team with a team, you can overcome, in my opinion, anything in transition, anything after transition, everyday stuff, as long as you have that board of, your own board of trustees, the people that you can go to, those people that are your tribe, that are a little bit smarter than you, that have different experiences that you can give you different perspectives. I think you can overcome anything.
The part that I think I missed the most, and I don't know, maybe you do find this in the civilian side, but you talk about having that conversation with your team members.
Yeah.
And you're talking about whatever situation. Yeah. And someone's finally going to go, you're a dumbass. That isn't going to work. You don't get to talk to your counterparts on the civilian side. Yeah. I don't think as often that way. Pull your head out of your ass. That's stupid.
Yeah. And I guess I shouldn't church it up as much, but that is exactly what happens. Tod, you're a dumbass. Like, we're like, no, I'm not a dumbass. You're a dumbass. Like, I mean, have you looked at yourself? Right. And it's like, and then you kind of giggle, and then you're like, okay, no, seriously, this problem, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes one of your buddies will walk in from the side and like, well, actually, both of you are dumbasses. Here's the right answer. And then some, like, what's more aggravating if that is the right answer? Like, you're like, yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad I came up with that idea, right? And they're like, no, I came up with that idea. Yeah, we're going to, agree to disagree on this one. And everybody kind of laughs and walks away, and like, it's just perfect, right? And you're right. Do you get that feeling? I mean, I've tried it a couple of times. I definitely get the weird look sometimes. Sometimes when I slip and I say something like, it's kind of mean, but yet endearing, I think what is the best way. And like, they're like, do you hate me? And I was like, no, actually, like, yeah, sorry about that.
Consider it a compliment that I felt comfortable enough to talk to you that way.
Know your audience, right? And it's like, but again, like when I said earlier, like, it's like we're one step away from that construction worker, talking to each other kind of thing. Cause I have a neighbor that is a construction worker in Troy, and he's like, and I've seen his buddy, and I like sit around, I'm like, oh my God, these guys talk just like we do. Like to each other, like they give each other like a hard time.
I think whatever profession you choose, the closer that profession gets you to possible death, the more you find those relationships.
Yeah.
I'm sure construction workers who are working on a 30-story skyscraper, there's not a lot of sweet talking because there isn't the time for it.
Right.
Hey, dumbass, turn around and look because we got a beam coming your way, or whatever it is. You're on the line with somebody. Those professions that don't have that big window of, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
That style of talk just tends to be the norm.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, there's time to talk and there's time for action, right? If you've worked with somebody long enough and all that, and like you have subordinate personnel that's working for you, there's probably that time where you have like, hey, I actually do want to hear what you have to say. But they also know that maybe it's by the tone of your voice or the tempo of how you're saying it, that, hey, it is now like, I don't have time right now. I need you to go execute. And for the most part, they're like, absolutely. We got stuff to do. Right. And they get after it. And maybe you got time on the tail end to be like, okay, this is what was going on. Hey, thanks a lot for just executing and not being that person of like, yeah, I'm not doing it until you tell me what's going on. Oh, okay. Like, it's like, all right, you get over and do it. Me and you're going to have to talk later. Right. military, we really don't have, like, there are times, but the culture understands it, right? They understand the tone of your voice. They understand what you're asking and how you're asking it, as if there is time. Like, they hear the sense of urgency, and they'll go, okay, we just have to do it right now. I can tell. And they go do it. And sometimes they could care less what the answer is, but sometimes you might owe it to them, or maybe you don't. But I think in an organization or a team where you've had those talks, where you've been brash with each other and you've had that camaraderie and playfulness, they all know by the tone of by each other's tone what needs to happen, right? Without saying an entire, paragraph of what needs to happen. It's like, yeah, I got you. I know what needs to happen, right?
Or the flip side, we've all worked with leaders, and I know I've seen it on the civilian side. Every issue is a fire. Every issue is right now it's got to be done. And so you tire your people out. Right. Whereas every once in a while, hey, this is really important. I don't have the time to explain it. Maybe through my tone of my voice or however, people just know, hey, this is important. We're going to move through it. But then you as a good leader understand that that was that situation. I need to come back around and explain the why.
Right. Yeah, I mean, good leader balances it, right? Mm-hmm. I think of when you were talking about like how everything's an emergency. In EOD, we have categories, A, B, and C, right? Priorities of executing different things. IED, it's going to be a Cat A. We're doing that, right? Unexploded ordnance, well, it ain't killing anybody right now. Put a perimeter. We get to that later. It allows you to prioritize tasking, right? But what happens is everything's an A. Everything's a priority, right? And even in my current job, everything's a priority. Everything's an emergency. And it takes that balanced leader to go, no, that's not, or go, is it really? Like, if everything's a priority one, then there's no priority. It just doesn't happen. And we definitely have had all those leaders, right? Where it's like everything's an emergency, everything's a fire, and it's like, no, everything's not a fire. And even if it is a fire, there is still a 1, 2, 3 process of what needs to get done first. I can't put out the water if my fire hose ain't hooked up and water going to it. Like, there's still a process. I can't put rounds down range if my weapon's not loaded. Like, there's just these things that just have to happen. But it's funny, in administrative stuff or decision making and stuff like that, guys who maybe haven't learned or haven't been mentored enough, they're overwhelmed. So everything's a priority, right? They haven't talked to enough people to create enough baseline of like, this is what I do in these situations, to be able to handle the excess, right? And hence everything becomes a priority. My wife works in the medical field. I hear the same stories there, right? And I kind of think and she equates it to that the person she works for is very young, probably just hasn't had the life experiences. I would caveat that with, I don't think you ever quit learning those skills. I don't care how old you get. Like, you're always evolving. You're always getting, learning new skill sets. Now, is your bandwidth probably, you can handle a lot more than, say, a rookie cop or me, or like a basic? Yeah. Because I just know a lot more. I've been doing it a lot more. I've got a lot of stuff basically baselined to things I don't even think of doing that I just unconsciously do. So I can focus on these new problems.
If I could boil it down for anybody who's in a leadership position, and it doesn't have to be a designated rank. You could just be the senior guy on your team.
Yeah.
But if you could always maintain the attitude of, when you're in that leadership position, there's either, how can I help my team, or am I in charge of them? Right. And if you could always defer to, how can I help them?
Yeah.
You'll be a better leader.
Absolutely. I mean, a leader has to have situational awareness up, like in the military, we call it up the chain of command and down the chain of command. And you got eyes going both ways, right? And you're like, Maybe that's why God gives you to them. I don't know. And so you can just be like, okay, maybe I don't have a great boss, and maybe everything's priority one. Well, now it falls to me to make that the priorities. All right, here are the priorities that I'm giving to you. This is what you're doing first. Or you are doing, X, Y, and Z now. And then end, because sometimes, the thing of, do you have to be a leader to lead? I don't think so. I've seen people who just have such great knowledge and just an aura about them that somehow they lead. Like, right? I think everybody's seen that, where it's like, well, he's not in charge, but he's actually in charge. Like he's just got this way about him, this Jedi thing where it's like, these aren't the droids you're looking for. And you're like, okay, stop doing that to me. Like, it's like, but it's awesome. Or the person that's like the oracle, you're like, okay, how does this work? And they're like, well, this is how it works. Are they the guy that's the boss? Sometimes not, and whereas leadership, if you're a good leader, you identify those people too, and you use them for their strengths, right? Like they use you for your strengths. Like if you know what everybody's really good at, like the people that I've met over my career, I'm not good at anything. Really? Well, what I've noticed about you. So maybe that's a part of being a great leader. Situational awareness, not just of the environment, but your people. To be able to notice what they bring to the table, right? Because when you're on a team, a platoon, and a car, you know what your partner's good at. Well, you know what you're good at. Hopefully you balance each other out. Now we're back to the balance thing. And it's like, okay, if we're all balanced, there shouldn't be anything we can't overcome. It does get a little tricky though when the person in charge, maybe he's overbearing, right? I've worked for a leader like that, super overbearing. Cannot tell him no to save your life, right? But you walk in, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to caveat this with, I'm going to say something you're not going to like. We can't do that, and here's why. Or we can't do that because this violates all this. So unless this has changed, and I'm telling you this not to make you upset, because if we do this, you're not going to have a job anymore, right? And I would definitely think that would be true in the civilians, whether it's law enforcement, firefighters, anything like that. It's like help inform. But sometimes you get a boss that's like, it just doesn't listen. And you just do your best. Make sure that the people below you are being taken care of, and that things are being done, morally, ethically, by the law, those kind of things. If you're doing all those, you're probably doing pretty good. It's a roller coaster, right? There's highs and lows.
That's an understatement. Because at the end of the day, people are still just people.
Yeah.
We just stick rank on them sometimes.
Exactly. And, there are good people, they're bad. Like, let me rephrase that. Yes, there are good and they're bad. But there are just some people that are they're better at some things than others. Sometimes people get put into leadership position, they're not ready for it yet, right? They just haven't churned enough to get all these skill sets to make them great, right? Or even just good. But if they have a great board of trustees, around them, they'll tell them, right? It's like, hey man, I saw you the other day. You came across like an asshole. Oh, what? No, I didn't. Yeah, you might want to go look at that. And get that honest truth, because they don't work for you. They may not even be in your profession, right? Like, it's just like, yeah, hey, I saw you the other day. Like, I could have swore you were saying this. No, I was saying this. Yeah, you might want to go back and take a look at that, because I think you were saying something else. I might be wrong, but just giving you a sensory note of what you may or may not be doing. I think if those people have their board, it helps. But I see a lot of people going through life alone, right? They may have what their friends and stuff. I don't think your board is your friends, right? Because your friends are usually a lot alike a lot like you, right? And you need those people that are not like you. In fact, now in my current job, if things are going great, spidey senses, something's wrong here. I am missing something.
I think that's one of the biggest things for an effective leader is when your people have confidence in you that those things, because things are going to go sideways. Every situation has the potential for it to go sideways. If your people have the confidence to know when it goes sideways, it's not going to fall on me. My boss is going to make sure that it keeps that top cover for me.
Right.
That is something that not a lot of people have, that natural instinct as a leader. And you hope that they learn it.
Yeah. Like what you just said, like first thing popped in my mind is like communication, right? Like how many times have I gone to someone and was like, hey, have you seen this? Is this something we need to do? Do I need to do this? Like, and just have a conversation. They may not even be aware of like this tasker or tasking, right? Or mission. And what's great is recently I kind of had the other end. A young person, gave them a task to do while I was gone, kind of didn't happen. And it really wasn't the task that made them like, even though they're like, well, I just didn't know how to do it and this, that, and the other. And as I kind of listened to what they weren't saying, really what it boiled down to, I feel like I'm just too young to go talk to this person and have a conversation. And so it was a great opportunity to go, hey, look, like through communication, if you can't communicate, then nothing happens. And you're feeling awkward, someone else feels like you didn't do something. Let's just go have a conversation with my boss's boss, right? And it's like, and that's where I saw it, right? It's like, oh no, I don't think like, no, it's okay. Come on, they're people. They are good people. They will have conversations. You're young. We need to develop you and show you how to do it the right way. To engage, people who are vastly senior to you or whatever. It's all a technique. But usually when you're trying to help someone, they're all ears, right? It's like, oh, you're here floor's yours. What do you need, right? And then you gain credit because they're like, you know what? I like that person. Everybody loves somebody who helps them, right? Like they should. And at the end of the day, it's like whether you're in the military or law enforcement or transitioning, we're all just trying to help each other, right? And there will be those people you meet that aren't there to help or return the favor. I'm sure at the end of a career, you've kind of figured out those personalities and you know to where to put your bandwidth toward, right? But all the principles, everything you've learned through the military, first responding, through a transition, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, what are you good at? Well, I'm good at these, like, even if you've got to do a laundry list, right? Well, I'm good at these things. Okay, what jobs fit to that? Okay, well, I could go do all these things. All right, which one of these jobs would make me happy? Because I know in the military, a big problem is sense of purpose. They go to some, job and they have some cheesy saying they have to do because they try to be the military, but they're not the military. And that's a huge turnoff for guys, right? And they're like, I'm not doing that. And I don't understand what I'm doing here. Like, what is my purpose here? What do I do? I think in saying that, though, you will never find the purpose that you had when you served the nation. It has to be something, not that, but not zero, but right in the middle, balanced. Because you're never probably going to find something like that ever again. You'll never find that sense of purpose. You'll never find the people that you're assigned to that are just like probably closer to you than your own blood relatives. And as long as you've done all that and you've known like, okay, I can read the operational environment, I can communicate, I can ask questions, yeah, I should have all the skill sets to move into any civilian job. Now, there's something you said earlier about going in and like handling like just, and I've had it said to me too that like, Todd, you can't go into a job and be as motivated or the appearance of motivation as you did in the military. And I was like, what? No, I'm there. Like, I'm just going to be me. And hearing this from different avenues of different people within different professions. And basically what I boil it down to is, again, if you don't understand your operational environment and you go in there and you start disrupting said operational environment, there could be an instance where you are now viewed as a threat to other ones, even though you're not. You're just there to do you and help them. And you could say teamwork all you want, but mine and your teamwork is not their teamwork. It's the same word, different. And because they just don't understand the true word of teamwork. Like, no, I'm not here for your job. I'm just here actually trying to make your job easier for you. Better. I don't care. Like most military guys I've seen have exactly like that. But it's very hard to get someone to believe you because they've just been, bamboozled too many times in the civilian sector. And they're just like, well, I don't even know why you would do that for me. Right? Military and you're in law enforcement, be like, oh, okay. Like, hey, I appreciate that. You just kind of assume it's going to happen.
Well, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you experienced this because I know I did. There are some times where certain people are promoted more by who they know than their accomplishments or their abilities. But from our side of the fence, right, that's I would say more of the abnormal.
Right.
For the most part. You may not agree with who gets promoted, but right, they're usually the most capable.
Mm-hmm.
Civilian side, and from my peripheral contact and connection with it, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times it's more relationships than abilities.
Yeah. And
for those of us who have spent 25, 30 years in these careers and then go into the civilian side and think that that's the way it's going to keep, you need to readjust your thinking perspective. And the other thing I would say too, though, is that when you talk about, you may never find that next career that's going to give you that sense of purpose, right, like what you had, but you've got to find a new purpose. You can't keep living in the past.
Yeah, that's definitely well said. Right? People ask me, it's like, well, why'd you go get your master's? Why do you keep doing these things? And I don't know. For me, it's like evolving. It's like because I keep telling myself, if I don't evolve, I die. Right? And it's I think anyone who continues to evolve, whether through the military or, into, say, a civilian sector job, they should have the skill sets to be like, okay, I see it. This person doesn't have it. Okay, well, you kind of became that person in the room, like I spoke about earlier. You're not in a leadership position, but you're kind of leading, right, from afar. And hopefully you have someone who is, because any first responder, any military guy, they definitely know how to mentor people, right? And hopefully the person that you work for is actually mentorable, right? Because you can definitely mentor up the chain of command. It's not just one way, right? Down. And it's up and down, right? And as long as that's possible, then you probably have a really good chance of taking someone who probably wasn't good or probably mediocre and making them good, right? And you can do that with your skill sets.
Circling back to you, when you went, for EOD as a reservist, is there a selection process as it would be if you were active?
Yeah, there was the whole selection process of there's just to get into the process, which I had to do to even be a diver in an EOD unit. So there was so many push-ups and, pull-ups and runs and swims and all that you had to do. It's all timed and they're all minimums. And then when you get to EOD school, it goes up a lot, right? And because I was already a diver in Mark 16, I went and had done the first section of EOD school to be a clearance diver at an EOD unit. When I went back, I just picked up where I was at there and moved forward. So I wasn't there a long time, but there was still like, you get put in an all Navy class because they just love to beat you down the most, right? Like, it's just that it's all good. Like, it's, instructors come by, they tell you, like, everybody there does like 20, except the Navy does 24 counts. And there's all this camaraderie. And then,
is EOD school a joint operation, or does Navy have their own?
Oh, no, it's joint, run by the Navy. And actually, here's a little fact. The SEALs were created by Admiral Kaufman, right? Yeah, Kaufman was an EOD guy. He came over from the Brits after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and started, back then it was called Bomb Disposal School. There was Bomb Disposal and Mine Disposal, two separate schools. And he created Bomb Disposal, then later created the SEAL teams. But Kaufman was a bomb disposal guy when he came over from the Brits. But going through that and based off of that, that's why they made it Naval, Explosive Ordnance Disposal School, and all four branches go there. They go through so much of it. So like, the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, they don't go through any of the diving parts of it. And they don't go to, because after everybody else graduates, we still have like another 2.5, 3 months of schooling left where we do all the underwater stuff. So underwater mines, underwater limpids, diving and all that. But during school, you still have your timed swims, your nav events, underwater nav board events, stuff like it. You have to do to continue to show your proficiency in the water while you're still doing all these surface type IED things. But you could even end up in school in a surface class with, the other services, and then toward the end get pushed into a Navy class. I actually had that happen to me when I went back because I just wanted to get started. And I was like, I don't care what class it is. I would prefer a Navy class, but I just want to get started. And they put me in a surface class, which was awesome because, I got to, make bonds with Marines and Air Force and Army peeps. Mostly the Marines I kept in contact with, and several of them we met back up with in Fallujah. And that we went to, and it was like an EOD schoolhouse party. It was like, oh, we're all getting back together again. And it is rewarding because in Fallujah, we had an organization called SEXY we give all our intelligence to, and that was made up of, Navy, Australian, FBI, DEA, so we get touch points into civilian law enforcement as well. And again, mentalities are all the same. Like it's again, you get together by a fire pit and yeah, we may be all getting burned, but dang it, who could you get burned with in better company, right? Like such great individuals and great people. I mean, the people that we've had the pleasure to work around, like it's just in my opinion, I've just been lucky to just be around some great humans, great Americans, people that truly would give you the shirt off their back. And it just, when you're in that type of unrealistic environment, there's always this thing of, I'm not doing enough. I need to be better. I need to do better. Because everybody around you is just such stellar individuals that you're like, okay, I gotta, my game needs to come up a lot.
I'm thinking and we've all experienced this, but for somebody who has not, be mindful of the person who tells a lot of stories, how cool they are, because the truly humble ones, the ones who have truly done it, they don't talk about it. They don't brag about all the cool stuff that they did.
Yeah.
So just kind of take that as a surface level observation when you're talking to somebody.
Somebody we talked about earlier before we started, Dan Hedrick, he's one of those people in my book. Very quiet. He's done a lot. And just so humble, right? But such a great person.
Did I interpret the way you said it correctly? When you got assigned to a SEAL team, it wasn't just disarming or disposal. There was also deployment of explosives on your part as an EOD guy?
Oh, well, you always deploy explosives when you're on the SEAL team because you're kind of like the subject matter expert when it comes to explosives. But during the war...
But is it more in the sense... It's not in the aspect of like a breaching environment. It's more of a...
Oh, no.
Hey, we want to clear a bunch of what we're not leaving behind or whatever. Is that kind of more of it?
Yeah, the frogs have they have their breachers, right? And they're great at it, but we're really there for be honest with you, before he'll go up to a door, we will check the door. Make sure there's not a pressure pad there, right? Waiting for us to step on. So we'll clear stuff.
Got it.
So as the train goes through the house, clearing the house, they may pop chem lights and stuff like that for IEDs and stuff like that. And I will quickly look to determine if it's something that's I can just deal with, or is it something that's going to bring down the entire structure on the team? And I've got to, use a pro word to get everybody out. But sometimes there are things that are found that we want destroyed as we move off target. I would set up all those charges. So I guess say big explosive applications would be Navy EOD or any booby traps as well.
Did you ever have one of those situations where the boom was bigger than you anticipated?
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit.
Actually there was. There's actually a couple stories like that. But again, those factors that you may have done it 100 times, but say a cloud layer is there that causes a reverberation, or where you're standing creates a channeling effect of the explosive wave, right? All those things, there was like a 1,000-pounder. We didn't know it was there in a dumpster. It was an IED, and we were pretty close, and that we were underneath an overpass. So not only did we have the overpass, but we had that angled part at the back. And I was kind of standing outside the Humvee, and my buddy Brian was sitting in the Humvee, and I was just kind of using the Humvee as frontal and overhead for me. And when the shot went off, the sound wave, it was like, whoo, that was a lot bigger than we thought, went from there and hit the top of the overpass. And the only thing I can expect is it hit the concrete behind me and directly back into the back of me.
Oh, wow.
Because when it hit me, it made me weak. And then I was like, oh man, I'm going down. I was dizzy. I was like, wow, what happened? And when we looked at it, we're like, oh, I should have noticed that. We were in a perfect, pinwheel, to bounce the sound wave basically right onto us from behind. So
a dumbass situation.
Exactly. I've had plenty of those. I tell everybody that it's always I'm walking away, I don't flinch during the explosions. And, it's anything but that. I've probably been more lucky than I've been good. Right. I've just been lucky that the guy to the left and right of me have always been outstanding individuals, probably have led to all our successes.
When you went back regular, so you had at the 10-year mark,
yeah.
Were you thinking just one more enlistment, or were you thinking, I'm going to do the remainder of a career?
Remainder of a career. I had talked to my wife about it. And I was like, hey, you understand if I go back where I'm going, right? But I want to do this. And she was like, okay, thumbs up, right? And so I had her support. Going back, again, it was that humility thing on a team. But I was only going to do 10 years because I only roughly had 10 years left. Somewhere at 25 or 26, I was like, wait, how long have I been here? And realized that, wow, I've been here a hot minute. And thought I was getting out with 26 years, but kind of forgot about my whole reserve time and the active duty time in the reserves during 9/11. And next thing you know, they come back and are like, oh yeah, you got like 30 years in. I'm like, oh, wow. Should have left a long time ago. And I always said too that I would leave when it stopped being fun. And there was a part that it went, wait a second, this has not been fun for a while. What am I doing? What am I, and that's probably when a good example of overstaying like a professional athlete, right? The guy who just doesn't know when to retire, right? Like, and then he kind of could have left at a high point, kind of leaving at a low point or a midpoint, not a low point. And I would say that some people do that because they just don't know how to stop, right? And when they get out, some people can retire, but they don't, because I don't think they know how to stop. Like they're like their entire lives they've worked, and now they're out. They have no more than enough money to legitimately retire, and they choose to work. I don't think it's because of the money. I don't care. I think it's just because Pavlov's dogs, they know how to work. And then some people are just worried that if they stop working, they will die. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, they've got nothing else beyond doing this job.
Right. I know people that definitely don't need to work. They are totally fine, but they do it. And most of them come back to support a profession. I'm guilty of this. That's very similar, and they have a sense of I'm doing something, higher, or doing something greater than myself still, and it gives them purpose. But at the same time, I would say that most people I know, they're not going they're older. They really can't go 100%. Most of them groan when they stand up from a chair, but they're still, helping the younger generation do their job. And whenever asked, they try to, spread some wisdom, maybe, and hope in hopes that it will help, right? And you hope that they don't make the same mistakes that you made. I don't know if that'll ever work, because we've all been young. Old guys don't know anything, and I've got this, Pops. But at the same time, it's just one of those things that, like, it happens. Can't be upset about it. I think it's like being a parent, right? You try to tell your kids certain things, they probably will pick up like maybe 1% or 5% of what you say, and life will teach them the other part. Now, of course, us old guys, we're all like, well, I would want you to not have to do that and learn and pick up where I left off and like dramatically like have a better life. But I don't know if having a better life is what makes us who we are or were. I think most of us, and I don't know if we'd ever say it, but like I don't think anybody's like, hey, yeah, give me an easy life. I think most of us are like, give me a hard life. Because through the hard life is what builds character and like grit and perseverance. And so when we have our kids, we're like, some people are like, well, hey, you know what? I don't want them to have to go through what I went through. Yeah, but what you went through made you who you are. And hopefully you're a good individual. And if you're a good individual, then maybe not give your kids everything. Make them, sometimes struggle is an illusion, right? How many times have you just, oh yeah, you do this, blah, 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 and then secretly you do something else for them, they don't even know. They may never know. Because you're so impressed with the fact they stepped up. They're like, no, I have this. Okay, this is working, right? And, or you could give someone everything and they be grateful for nothing. We've had operators like that who are entitled, right? Entitled operators, right? And EOD guys, because they're just giving it all. They never do their rookie time. They're just kind of like, everybody praises them, even when they haven't done anything. And even if they are great.
And they come to expect that praise too.
Yes. And even if they are great, Yeah, don't tell them. Like, still make them feel like they have to do their part to get on this team. And then once they're on the team, then later you can be like, no, actually, you were pretty great. We just couldn't, like, we just need to shape you to the right person. Like, and I've seen when that's not happened, and it's not been good, right? And there's such a small period. I think it's like raising kids, right? Small period, you can influence and shape them. In the military, you get a second chance because they get so torn down, and in a organization like this, they want to be there. So you have that to work with you to get them to like.
The grind doesn't need an introduction. You feel it in the early mornings, in the long days, in those moments when quitting would be easier, but you don't. Grind, spelled GRND, isn't just a brand, it's a mindset. It's the decision to keep moving forward even when progress feels slow and nobody's watching. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear is built around one simple idea. Give everything you have and then give more. Rooted in American grit and culture, every piece is designed with purpose and commitment woven into the fabric. It's functional, durable, and built to hold up under real effort. Grind is made for people who outwork the rest. And when you wear Grind, you're not just wearing a logo. You're representing how you live, how you train, and how you show up. So visit thegrindcollective.com. That's the GRND collective.com and use the promo code TRANSITION15 for 15% off your order. You're already on the grind. Now wear it.
My last platoon, first time I ever heard in my life, hey, what's in it for me? What? Okay, I'm going to go handle some stuff. Be here when I come back. I don't even know how to deal with this right now. Because you just didn't say things like you're trying to prove that you're worth being on that team. So coming back, and I'm like, okay, well, since you want to be an individual, you can sweep mop the floor. Don't stop until I tell you to stop, right? Actually kind of forgot. A month later, I'm like, oh, hey, JJ, yeah, you don't need to do that anymore. Fast forward, years later, now he has his, like, he's in a supervisory position as a E6, and I see him, he's like waving at me in the hallway, and I'm like wave at him, going to my office. He comes in, he's like, how you doing this morning? I was like, I'm doing good, JJ. He's like, guess what? I was like, what, JJ? He's like, I got new guys. And I'm like, oh, well, JJ, I hope at least one of them is a pain in the ass like you were to me, please. And of course I'm laughing and stuff, but he was a pain in the ass. But loved the guy to death. And he goes, hey, had a guy, he's said, what's in it for me? And I was like, oh, I know where this is going. I was like, oh, hang on, JJ. What I did to you, maybe I could have done that in a different way. Don't do what, like, please don't say you're doing what. He goes, I was like, so what are you doing down there? He's down there sweeping them off on that floor, like every day, like for a month. I'm like, okay, we need to break the cycle here. Like, maybe there's another way. And he's like, no. He's like, it worked for me. It's going to work for him. And I'm just like, oh God, what have I done? So I literally went, okay, you literally have to be careful with the things because they're funny, but it creates a cycle. And
everything we do is a cycle. Nobody comes up with anything new. We only do what was done to us.
I know. It's such a truer statement. There is literally nothing new. It is just a cycle. And it just reoccurs constantly. We're the ones who just rediscover it constantly. And not a truer statement. Like, literally, I've heard that said literally on Friday at work. And it was like, none of this is new, right? We just keep doing the same thing. Like, well, it's new to me. But no, transition.
So your transition actually snuck up on you then?
No, it did, but it didn't. So I was going to retire in 2020. Had plenty of time, and not really plenty of time. I kind of was shortchanging myself. I was still the guy that was showing up to work and working as if I was not retiring.
2020, you had how many years at that point?
That would have been my 26 mark. But because of COVID, they kept people a year longer.
In your mind at that point, were you going to 30?
No, it was a surprise. The 30 was a surprise. I was going to 26 and getting out. That's when I really understood finally that a group with different viewpoints has a capacity to overcome any problem whatsoever. Just don't get out and lose that. Because, again, I've had too many friends who's like, it's lonely out here. Okay, well, here in San Diego, we do this thing once a month on, a Saturday called the Blasters Breakfast, where young guys and new guys come together and we talk. Networking, right? I was like, you could do that up in San Francisco area. And he's like, oh, excuses, right? It's like, man, what happened? Like, you used to kick in doors all the time. Now, like, I don't know what this is. It's like, you said you got a problem. Well, go fix your problem. He did. And he does it up there now. And now he's created his group, and that we had conversations about how he didn't have a tribe, and now he has a tribe. And some of them are cops, and, because they're just the right mentality. And, I think one's a real estate person that they all have different skill sets that complement everybody. And he does hang out more with the cops. In fact, that he was a cop. But again, he created his tribe up there when he didn't have one. And I mean, those guys were even floating off by themselves too. They really weren't. They just going to work, go home, go to work, go home. Instead of like, hey, can I ask you a question? Like, I've got this problem. I've got this new leader, and I can't tell him anything. I've kind of exhausted. You've done this a lot longer than me. I've exhausted my toolbox. Got any ideas? Because it's getting to a point now where he's causing me problems, right? Or he's doing stuff that I just don't want to be fragged by when it goes bad, right? And that's when that knowledge and wealth of knowledge comes in, and that team. So, well, you could do this, you could do that, and somewhere maybe none of it's the right answer, but at least you figured out probably wasn't the right answer. At least that's an answer. And again, it's you balance all the information you get, but from trusted sources, right? Because they got your best, because they're going to ask you the same thing. And I think if you have that when you're in, I think if you have that when you're out, you have all the right conditions for success. Because even if you got lazy or lax or got off the road somehow, and they're going to pull you back on it. And we're like, well, da da da. They may listen to you for a while, and then they'll be like, okay, look, enough. You don't work out anymore. You've gained, 100 pounds, whatever, and you're a blob. Obviously, you're not happy with yourself. Go fix that. Get back in your routine. Get to the gym. You know how to do that, and get back to you, right? And I see it sometimes. Like most guys, they go through their fat phase when they get out, and the next time you see them, you're like, "Ooh, took this working out thing to the nth degree," right? So, or like take this the wrong way, but amongst EOD guys, like we've got a dark sense of humor, right? And it's like, "Ooh, how much longer you got to live, man?" Like they're like, "What are you talking about?" We're like, "You obviously got cancer, right? Because you're like, no, I quit drinking. I work out all the time now." And it's like, wow, okay. Have me a little worried. Like, and most guys are like, you know what, man, F you. Like, it's like, yeah, I love you too, man. Like, it's like, but again, maybe it's the, not having, what's the stress hormone?
I was going to say not having a filter.
Well, that'll work too. But no, it'll come to me. But I know a lot of people are first responders.
Cortisol?
Cortisol. So, thank you. So cortisol, right? I think when we're in the job, we get overloaded. Cortisol makes us usually carry more weight than we're supposed to carry because it's just stress hormone. And that's what it does. And then when you get out, your body goes through a shock phase of like, what's happening? Because a lot of guys, man, when they let go. And it's just too much. And they'll still gain a bunch of weight because usually it's because they fall out of their routine. But then they get back into a routine, but then they're minus all this cortisol that's coming in. So now it's like they work out barely and they're just like, Greek gods or whatever, just like me. Yeah. But no, just something.
You said you weren't going to say that in this podcast.
Well, it's sometimes people slip. But no, the guy, they look so light though. When guys get out and I see them, and it's just like, I feel like their personalities, they're about to float away. Like there's no gravity anymore because they're just not carrying all those rocks in their ruck anymore. And in my experience and talking to others, and we talk about it, and it's like, well, yeah, I actually carried a bunch of rocks that weren't even my rocks to even carry. Like I couldn't change that if I wanted to, ever. But I carried the burden of it for some reason. And so you see guys like that too that are happy, but sometimes happy and without like a direction. Yeah. Sometimes it's okay to have a direction.
Did you already have the Honor Foundation lined up when you retired, or did that happen afterwards?
A little after, yeah. So
what was your actual retirement date?
November 2021.
And did you have anything planned at all for afterwards? At
that point, I was like, I'm going to go to school. Because I felt like if I got a business degree, I could talk business and I would look like, I wouldn't look so military, right? So we went to USC, he got his business degree. Oh, he's like us. That's hiring, right? Still was hard. I can't say if it was or wasn't, but being older doesn't help. I don't know if it's how I had one person, I used the veteran card and was like, hey, can you tell me what, like, so I can understand what I can do for the next interview I have, or like, what did I mess up? And she was like, you didn't mess up anything. She goes, the problem is that you're overqualified. And I was like, okay, can you tell me what that means? Because is that just like, it's not me, it's you, we're just breaking up? Like, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. Is it your way of telling me softly that you just don't want to hire me? And she goes, no, what it is you're more qualified than the person you're about to work with. And I'm like, well, I'm okay with that. I saw how much it pays on LinkedIn or whatever. I was like, I'm okay with that. Yeah, but he's not. And that's a perspective I have never had to deal with before, because sometimes like you just do it, right? Like there's none of that like, ooh, like fear my job or whatever. And I realize it's a reality in the civilian sector and all that. And
from the employer side of it though, think of it this way. You got somebody who comes in and on paper and everything else, they are overqualified.
Right.
They're not going to stay satisfied in that position.
Yes.
So they're looking at it from their long-term aspect also, which is they're rightful to do, is what's going to be the benefit of hiring this person if they're too qualified for this position?
So that was I would say that was probably the second thing I started understanding, right? Cause I'm like, no, like I'll do it. And I had another HR lady who was nice enough to kind of debrief me. Very rarely do you get those, but she did say that. She's like, we can't afford you. Okay, I don't know what that means. And because in the military, you only make a certain amount of money, and you have no idea what that translates to in the civilian world. And nobody's going to tell you. So I think a lot of veterans get out and they are underpaid and they're unhappy because they're doing one step above janitor, but nothing else because they think they don't have any qualifications to do such things. So it's like, it's hard to get in, and you can't get in, like, you haven't done your time in the trenches. But I'd question, like, well, as a buddy of mine said, he's like, well, we hire people all the time. We wouldn't ask someone at your skill level to start in the trenches. I was like, well, it seems to be a commonality in the military, like people leaving the military. It's like you were just born and you have nothing, like no skills whatsoever. And, you know, it's hard. It really is hard to breach that and get it. The only way I think that works is if there is someone there that is hiring you that has a military background that actually understands what you're bringing to the team. That's how you would get in at an appropriate level. But I also heard that, well, we hire a lot of military and they quit on us. And I honestly think that happens because they're hiring them and they're putting them in positions that are so far down the food chain. They're just not happy. There's no challenge here. There's I'm wasting away here. Let me go find somewhere where what I bring to the table is either going to be listened to or used at an appropriate level. And I heard that from several companies of like, well, we just have a hard time with retention. And then when I saw where they were placing the like military personnel, I was like, well, of course. I mean, you're asking people to go into entry-level jobs, and you know that job is the same as it is in the military. So I think that's where the military does a dishonesty with naming its things different. There's a new thing that happened at, say, SOCOM, they call them primes. They're not like, what is a prime? Who knows? What are they really? They're project managers. But instead of calling them project managers and reinforcing that, like basically unconsciously training those people, so when they get out and they're like, what'd you do in the military? Oh, I was a project manager. The military just wants to use other vernacularies that aren't conducive to a person getting out. Elon Musk, for example, like he at SpaceX, he got tired of all that, the acronyms, right? Military loves their acronyms. He got to a point where it's detrimental to business because we spend more time trying to figure out what the acronym is than just saying it in plain English. And he actually instituted to where he was basically the commander-in-chief of acronym approvals, right? I thought that was a little ridiculous when I first heard it. And then once I got to the SEAL teams at Warcom, I realized like I think there's truth to that. Like I spend more time, and it's an easy way for someone to keep you in the dark. I know more than you do, right? And it's like, okay, I hate to be the guy at the meeting that every 5 minutes I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Can this meeting come with like a cheat sheet or something? Like, and because every community has a different one. Law enforcement has theirs. Microsoft has theirs, even though that's what I find interesting too. They tell you not to use acronyms, but every company has their own acronyms.
Yeah, it's not don't use acronyms. It's don't use the ones that don't apply here.
Exactly. And that's exactly what they should say, right? But I will say that it is a habit that military definitely need to wean themselves from. Just start saying plain language what they do. Use it. If they don't know how to say it, translate it to, civilian talk. Again, get on AI and ask AI. Hey, I'm military. I do this. Blah, blah. How would I explain to a civilian person what I do? And it has been great at that. I think it's helped a lot of people that I know be able to translate their skill sets better. In the fact of, I had one buddy tell me, he's like, yeah, I did an interview, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, they were like, were you in the military? And he's like, I felt like I succeeded at that point. Like they were unsure if he worked at the Navy or if he was in the Navy. And there seems to be a distinction there amongst the civilian population, right? Like it's better if you worked at the Navy than you worked in the Navy. Thank you for your service though, but there's There's a difference.
To a degree, it's almost kind of working your way through the civilian sector. You didn't work at Microsoft. You worked, for Microsoft.
Right.
And it was just a place that you worked. And you developed a skill set and you moved on. Whereas tends to be with first responders and veterans, that was who we are. Yeah. That was me.
Oh, yes.
And so there is no, a weird way I'll say, there's no growth beyond just that uniform.
It's interesting you bring that part up. Identity, right? I would say that identity, my essence was a Navy EOD technician, right? That's who I was. And I watched a buddy of mine kind of go through some hard times. And he, so hard that he revealed this to me later. And he was like, Todd, I almost did it. And I'm like, ooh, what? No. I don't remember getting a phone call, right? And I was like, he goes, well, obviously I didn't do it. I'm like, well, the fact you were thinking about it, like, have I not shown you that I'm here? And I think it's just something we don't ever think of, right? I think you could be there for someone, but when they're in that thought pattern, it's kind of hard to get them out of it. Luckily, he got himself out of it. But he shared something with me very profound, and I got lucky because of the timing of it. This was probably 2 or 3 years out from whenever I decided. But I watched him go through it, and he talked about it. He goes, here's the problem. My life is being a Navy EOD tech. And I was like, okay, Mike, yeah. He goes, but when I didn't have that, or the thought of losing that, then what else was there to live for? And I was like, ooh, okay. Okay, and he kept going. He's like, I realize that is just something I do, not who I am. And they're two separate things. And I think I blew him off initially. Yeah, whatever, man. And then, but he was the squeaky wheel that got the oil, right? He just kept he would talk about it. And he goes, so what do you think about these things? That's how he got me, right? I was like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, well, have you thought of this? He goes, what happens when you think about leaving this organization? Who are you then? And I'm like, ooh. He goes, because you're not Honey Tater anymore, which is my nickname. You're not Tater, not Honey Tater, you're just Todd. I was like, okay, yeah, that's true. I will do something else. And I think him walking me through all that kind of made me realize that that's just something I do. And I would watch people who had gotten out and they're still in. A guy there's a thing called TAP class, Transition Assistance Program. And the guy running it, I was walking up to the door and there was a guy standing out front and I was like,
are you a student or are you an instructor?
I was a student and I had to it's a requirement. To
no, asking him.
Oh,
he doesn't look like he's out,
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So a guy was standing out front in a suit. And I'm like, that dude was in the Marine Corps and he was probably a drill instructor just by the way he stood and he looked unapproachable. Of course, I have this weird thing where if you look unapproachable, I approach you because I just want to see what you're about. And so we talked. He's a really great guy. But I was like, ooh, if I was a civilian, I would never go talk to that guy. That guy looks like he's about to bite my head off. And so as we got through the class, we talked more, and because we had a lot of commonalities, we had chewed the same dirt, in Iraq, and so I was like, hey man, I was like, can I give you some would you be open to some criticism, constructive criticism? It's always constructive when you're giving it, but anyway, he goes, yeah. I was like, hey man, you had said that you worked somewhere else. It didn't work out. And now you have this job. Like, yeah. have you seen yourself? He goes, what do you mean I haven't seen myself? Of course I've seen myself. And I was like, no, man. I was like, you look like I could tell you were a Marine and probably a drill instructor, and you are non-approachable. If I'm saying that and I'm in the service, what do you think the average civilian thinks? They think that they're waiting for you to go crazy and shoot up the place. That's what they think. They're not going to say it, but that's what they're thinking. And I'm like, you need to soften your look. You need to be approachable, or I'm scared you're just going to continue to have this problem. And I hadn't heard from that guy in like 4 or 5 years, and got a phone call. Like, I was like, oh, first off, I was like, oh, and I answered it. And he's like, hey, Todd, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what are you doing these days? He goes, well, I moved to LA. And I was like, oh, okay. Cause he lived in Oceanside, I believe. And he's like, I moved to LA, I'm working for Lockheed Martin. I was like, okay. Yeah, I've been here for a while now. I'm a senior project manager here. I was like, oh. And I was like, so you're telling me you're calling me with a job, right? And he goes, no. He goes, but if you are interested, you let me know. He goes, because I'll look for you. He goes, but no. He was like, hey, thanks, man. He goes, I kind of asked some other people about me because I was still kind of a stranger to him. And he's like, yes. And I guess they all like validated. He's like, yeah, you do look like that. And he goes, I had to work really hard on like what he goes, every window I pass by or mirror, or not mirror, but window, I would look at myself to see what I looked like. Not because I wanted to look like, and I was like, yeah, I got it. And he's like, just to make sure that I looked like I was approachable. And I was like, well, you got to do the mirror neurons thing, right? Like, you got to smile, man. You don't smile. And he's like, because if you smile at people, it just, they reflect what you reflect. If you look unapproachable, they're going to be unapproachable. If you smile, they'll smile. I was like, and he goes, yep. He's like, I'm pretty sure that's why I got to my senior project manager position. I was like, hey, man, congratulations. And he's like, oh, I was like, no, man, it's not about me. It's about us. Hopefully you are paying it forward to someone else. You're helping that young Marine. I was like, there's a lot of military guys there. I'm sure there's somebody there who still walks around like they're still in the military and still talks like they're in the military. And I was like, so if you can help them, if they're open to it, I was like, that's all you got to do, man. Just keep pushing forward, keep mentoring, keep helping people. I was like, because we can get through it alone. It could be rough, but we can get through it together and probably have a good time doing it. Right. And life ain't no different.
What's the job you're doing today?
I am the deputy for force design at Naval Special Warfare Command. So my job is to look at the year 2040, problem solve backwards to figure out how to get the SEAL of today to be the SEAL of the future with all the given technology. So it's a lot of looking at technologies, mapping their growth, futurist type stuff. And it's very challenging, both on the people side, because not everyone has the skill set to see that far. Not everybody works at like Toyota's notorious for doing things like this. The military has always done it. It's just, I wouldn't say it's been given a lot of effort or maybe the right people. I'm not saying I'm the right person, but I will definitely give it a good college try. Looking at what's failed in the past and kind of going, well, we're not going to do that. That's failed in the past. Albert Einstein said, doing whatever failed in the past, just definition of insanity. So we're just going to do something different. And I've got leadership that has been very open to different attack, angles and vectors. Sometimes you do have to put it back in their language to get them to words that resonate with people. So it's been a finding how to speak different languages to different people to keep them interested and showing them that old saying that you can tell someone 1,000 words with a picture. So true. So true. Do that a lot. Realize like sometimes when you're trying to explain something like to someone is like, if I showed you in a picture, you think you'd understand it? Yeah, give it a shot. Show it to them. They're like, oh, I understand now. And so it's challenging work. I work with a lot of great people. Which was one of my top 5 in, the Honor Foundation, work with people I love. And man, every person I work with, they're such great people. Great people, great Americans, collaborative. It's definitely rewarding.
Before you got to where you're at today, did you go through multiple iterations, or were you lucky enough to get this spot right quickly?
So, best time to find jobs when you have a job. So I was looking for a job, and it was frustrating. It was hard to get in the door. And if I got an interview, I was overqualified every time. So I was almost at the point to dumb down my resume. And that's where I was like, okay, that's the only option, because I tried to. So if I'm not hitting the appropriate entry jobs, then I need to go higher. So I tried those, and those that were like, well, you haven't done time in the trenches. But so I was like, okay, those are 2 no's. I don't know where and then a lot of people are like, just get in to get in. And I'm like, okay, well, that's an option. I really am not willing to do that quite yet, because I think that narrative needs to die and go away, because civilians don't do that. Somehow that's only saved for military. And so one day I just get a phone call, and it's like, hey, I was talking to a former troop commander of mine when I was at SEAL Team 3. And he goes, your name came up saying that you have a specific set of skills that we think is perfect for what we do here. And would you be interested? And I was the guy that was like, I am not taking a government job. Not at all. I'm getting far away as I can. I'm not doing that. But when it started getting, I was like, okay, well, I'm not getting any other bites here. Let me give it a shot. So I go in, we do the interview, and, it's like, again, peas and carrots. It just, everything fit. And I'm like, okay, well, I felt pretty good about that. So then they came back, and, it's the whole like job negotiation kind of thing. And I do, and of course I take the job because I was like, well, it is better than where I'm currently at. So I feel like I'm moving forward. And so I get into the job. The people are great. The job is great. It's challenging. And at the same time, leadership is like, well, how do we get you, like, we don't want you going away. Here's some things we want you to be a part of, so we can possibly, promote you later. A buddy of mine who went and worked at EOD guy, Joe O'Brien, went to NASA in a government job. And he was the same way. He didn't want to take it, but he took it because it was available. And he started out here, and a year later he was here, and a year later he was here, and then a year later he was here. And he just kept climbing because he was just, well, one, he's a highly intelligent individual, but he was proficient in what he did. They didn't want to lose him. And so hence they kept giving him opportunities. I would say where I'm at now, it's the same thing. We keep getting opportunities for growth and promotion and things like that.
How do you like being back under the government umbrella?
It has its pros and cons. I'm a little disappointed that I wasn't able to, like, with my business degree, to like go in and break into industry. I question myself sometimes, like, well, did I just kind of continue to do what I was doing? Did I just fall back in a rut? Possible. I've had a couple people come up and go, hey, I would like to talk to you about some possible, job opportunities. That's not in Bangladesh, India. So it is a job position that gives me exposure outside of the government, which has led to some people going, what would it take to get you to come to us, right? And, it's a networking thing, right? And we're having those discussions now. And it's super interesting, some of the work they're doing with 3D printing, metal alloys, plastics, stuff like that. And whereas I'm like, I think that's the way of the future. And whereas the government would be able to control their costs if they just owned, those products. But you have the defense industry that will definitely not like that. But anyway, it's self-awareness, right? Like, it's like, am I falling back in? I think any good leaders do that. They're self-aware of themselves. They don't dwell on things, but they will reflect, right? Am I doing the right thing, or am I really doing something different, or am I just doing the same thing? I will say that I do use my business degree a lot here, so I'm going to say that it's not the same. I'm able to push topics to a different level. I have a better understanding of bringing things together, like the military's acquisitions process, to budget, to capabilities, whereas my last job that I had before this one, I was mostly doing military acquisition stuff. And so I understand the pitfalls and how to quasi-circumvent them by, just predicting, right? Predicting what leaders, time, how to write certain things in a certain way that's not, you don't back yourself into a corner when it comes to like designing, say, a new weapon system. So, but no, it's truly rewarding, mostly for the people. The people I work with makes it rewarding. The pay's not bad.
I always like to wrap up the episodes with giving the guest any last opportunity for a piece of advice, that one piece, that nugget that you want to make sure that people hear about.
Oh, for all the first responders out there, all the military guys, they grew up in a forge, right? They've been tried and they've been tested and all that. And I would say that's the definition of, they asked for a hard life and not the easy life, because the easy life would be not a first responder. Don't let that go, because that created you, that formed you into the person you are today, that made you successful today, that led you to where you are today. Take that on the other side once you transition and keep that going. Don't just let go, because the things that made you successful still work on the other side of transition, and keep moving forward. Again, don't ask for an easy life. Ask for a hard one.
I appreciate you sharing your story. Thanks for your time. And I wish you all the best going forward.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really love what you're doing here and helping others, man. It's a testament.
Thank you. I appreciate it. As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask, please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.